So my dude, the YouTube channel Dill decided to respond to me having Roman Gonzalez as number one pound for pound. He brought up some excellent points in his video. He pretty much said that he thought that Sergey Kovalev belongs number one pound for pound. Gives some pretty good reasoning for why he thinks that. He also mentioned Vladimir Klitschko in the discussion as well. And then I decided to rebut his video. But I mean, before you guys listen to what I'm about to say in this video, I'd suggest you go check out his video. It's the newest one that he's made. It's entitled "Nauta Roman Gonzalez is not pound for pound, or is not number one. Sergey Kovalev is. No pound for pound in it. Is not number one. Sergey Kovalev is." So with that said, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read off the comment that I left him in his comment section, because I feel that it pretty much summarizes exactly the points that I'm trying to get across, and then I might add to it after I'm done reading it off. And here it goes. I respectfully disagree. What Kovalev has done recently at 175, Gonzalez did years ago at 105. He dominated the man, the number one fighter, at 105, which was Yutaka Nida, in a fight that he was an underdog in. Then went on to beat some of the best guys at 105 and 108 while being avoided by Dani Nietes and some would say Giovanni Segura, both of whom were champions at the same time at the same weight that Gonzalez was. Nietes at both 105 and 108 and Segura at 108. Guys that Gonzalez already beat went on to become not just champs but unified champs after he beat them. Estrada, Rodriguez, and Takayama all became unified champions after Roman Gonzalez beat them. So he was able to catch them on the upswing before they even achieved their greatness. And shortly before, basically. While Yegashi went on to become a three-weight champ after Gonzalez dethroned him. Yegashi was a world champion at 105, became the lineal world champion at 112, the lineal title that goes back through Manny Pacquiao, incidentally. After Gonzalez, and then Yegashi won the 108-pound title from Javier Mendoza just last year in a pretty stunning fight, pretty stunning upset. Mendoza's a damn good fighter, and for Yegashi to have cleaned his clock, I mean, well, not really cleaned his clock. No, he didn't knock him out, but cleaned him up. Won a dominant decision over him was extremely impressive. So yeah, he went on to become a three-weight champ after Gonzalez dethroned him, with Estrada and Yegashi still reigning to this day. To this day, Yegashi is the 108 is what is it, the WB? No, he's the IBF. The IBF 108-pound champion, while Estrada, of course, is the WBA and WBO unified flyweight champion. Let's see. They're still waiting to this day, while Gonzalez is the lineal champ with only Estrada to rival his claim in the third weight class of 112. Some people also toss I'm Not Wrong in the discussion, but like I've said a few times now, anybody who's seen the I'm Not Wrong versus McWilliams-Arroyo fight, the fight is widely available on YouTube, both in the original Thai language as well as EJ Boxing Live did an English commentary for that fight as well. And most people saw Arroyo losing, a bad close decision. Basically, that Arroyo deserved to win the fight, that he essentially got robbed. Not like a robbery where it's like he clearly kicked Wrong's ass, but I mean, in most of those rounds, he kind of kicked Wrong's ass, dropped Wrong, hurt him several times. Wrong fouled him at least about 7-8 times, and likely should have gotten points taken away for body slamming, tackling, and so on and so forth. It's that culmination of factors and his dominance in all but two fights, with one of those close bouts already avenged, that get him the top spot. And of course, one of those two fights is the Juan Francisco Estrada fight. The other fight I'm referring to is the fight that he had with Francisco Rosas, which was a defense of his original 105-pound title. He defeated Francisco Rosas by a majority decision, a very tough fight. Rosas was able to pretty much hang in there stamina-wise with Gonzalez. He was able to go punch for punch, blow for blow with him. And I mean, just the pace of that fight was immense. It's an intense pace that you rarely see in any world championship fight. They wound up rematching. What was that about? I think it was a little less than a year later, and it was at 108, and Gonzalez knocked Francisco Rosas out in the second round of that rematch. So basically, he did, for instance, what Floyd Mayweather did against Maidana and Castillo. He rematched the guy that quote unquote beat him. The guy that made shit close, and he blew him out of the water. He made it not even a contest. Rosas gave him some trouble in the first round of that rematch, but Gonzalez quickly shut that down. All right, next paragraph. Kovalev's one great opponent was Hopkins, whose record speaks for itself. It clearly does. But aside from the old man, most of Kovalev's other top opponents didn't do anything great after Kovalev beat them. That's a big part of the reason why I rate Roman Gonzalez number one. He has several fighters who achieved great things not only before he beat them, like like Yagashi, like Yutaka Nida, like Ramon Garcia Hirales, but guys who achieved great things after he beat them. Francisco Rodriguez Jr., Katsunari Takayama, Juan Francisco Estrada, and then Miyagashi once again. Let's see. Didn't do anything after Kovalev beat them, and only a couple did much that was impressive before he beat them. Namely, Pascal, Jean Pascal, and Campillo, Gabriel Campillo. And I put in parentheses, who many forget was coming off the controversial loss to Cloud. Gabriel Campillo, of course, was coming off a split decision loss to Tavoris Cloud. Most people thought he won the fight, and basically, like he was the uncrowned champion, so to speak. He went in there with Sergey Kovalev. Kovalev annihilated him in 2 rounds. It wasn't even a contest. And destroyed him, and he was the first guy to do that. I mean, Campillo has been knocked out a few times since then, but I mean, you saw even against Thomas Williams Jr. that you can't count Campillo out, even after all these years and wars and knockouts and the whole nine. So there it is. Stevenson, Adonis Stevenson, is the glaring name missing from Kovalev's reign thus far. Kovalev is definitely top 5 based on the level of destruction that he's brought to guys at or near top of the 175 division. But as far as I'm concerned, Ward is his Estrada and vice versa. The way I see it is Kovalev hasn't really fought his one great rival at light heavyweight the way that Estrada kind of has already. Estrada had a potentially great rival in Francisco Rosas, blew him out in the second round of their rematch. He had a potentially great rival in Akira Yagashi, who, was a multi-weight champion just like Estrada was. Blew him out in, 6 rounds? Had a potential great rival in Kazuto Yoka. Well, Kazuto Yoka is still a potential great rival, in spite of his close decision loss to I'm Not Ronrong. It was another somewhat controversial one. I think Ronrong nicked the one against Yoka as opposed to the one against Arroyo. Yoka is another guy that was coming up at 105, 108, and 112 the same time that Gonzalez was. He's another 3-weight champion. So he's another potential rival for him. So that's one guy that he hasn't fought yet, but he did lose to Ronrong, and so that strikes against him to a certain degree. He's not on the level of an Estrada, and so far as being Gonzalez's rival. So Gonzalez's chief rival is still Estrada. I mean, of course, if he moves to 115, that changes completely. Then he has a whole new set of rivals to fight and prove himself against. But once again, this is his third weight class. Even for the people that say like, oh, it's only 3-4 pounds between weight classes. Well, 3 or 4 pounds between guys at 105, 108, 112 is just as big of a difference as moving from 126 to 130, which is only 4 pounds, and moving from 130 to 135 in terms of percentage of the overall weight. You divide the percentage that like 3 pounds by 105 pounds. You divide 5 pounds into 130 pounds. You're getting similar percentages of moving up in weight. And even then, if you don't even want to give credence to that, which you really should, you can also say that, well, it's 7 pounds he's moved up so far. He's pretty much dominated. Ward is just now moving up the 7 pounds, but Ward isn't necessarily in this discussion. This is more about Kovalev. Kovalev hasn't moved up at all. He's at his original weight class. But at the same time, Sergey Kovalev in his original weight class has done some pretty good things, and that's no denigration on a guy staying in one weight class and dominating for years and years and years. If you do that, that's a big accomplishment. Marvin Hagler was once the pound for pound number one. He never moved up once. He just dominated at middleweight. Of course, he fought a number of guys moving up, but they chose to move up. They chose to move up, fight him. He did the damn thing, and that's what it was. He was supposed to win some of those fights of those guys moving up, the likes of Leonard and Duran. But ultimately lost to Leonard. He wound up retiring. So there wasn't really much of an argument after that since he retired. But that's that's going into history. But I'd say Ward is pretty much Kovalev's Estrada. Similar type of situation there, similar type of rivalry, similar type of two guys that have or would go on to achieve great things in boxing. Essentially, Estrada hadn't been really heralded up until that fight, but the very next fight he went out there and pieced up Brian Valoria. Pieced him up, just cleanly outboxed him, and then he's gone on to outbox a number of great fighters since then. Ward, of course, he's coming off a pretty tough fight against Sullivan Barrera, but even still, Barrera showed class in that fight, and so Ward, struggling with him, quote unquote, to me is the same as like Gonzalez struggling with Arroyo, quote unquote. Clear, clean cut fights, and against tough high level fighters. Tough high level fighters who have great amateur pedigree and who are top good pros. But let me get to the third paragraph before I get lost here. With Vladimir Klitschko, the problem is that he lost, and convincingly so. If you lose, you drop in the rankings whether it's divisional or pound for pound. And with pound for pound, the drop is weighed heavier because you're competing against every active fighter in every weight class, as opposed to just one. And especially if you get schooled like he did and went out like a punk. Fury had Vlad shook as hell, and it's the cherry on top of a career where Vlad in particular, not so much Vitaly, was thought to be a quote-unquote bum killer in a weak division. Now granted, you can only fight who's out there, but the fact that Vitaly had to clean his dirty laundry from Purity to Sanders to Peter is what helped fuel that perception. And his going out with a whimper rather than a roar is ultimately a major detriment to him. As well as the fact that someone like Bryant Jennings got destroyed by Luis Ortiz in a way that Klitschko couldn't hope to match, and that was very shortly after that. Roman Gonzalez and Sergey Kovalev don't have guys that they struggled with who went on to get thoroughly smashed the way Jennings did by a different opponent. And the other problem is, at heavyweight, there's so much new blood that Klitschko needs to fight and beat them if he wants to remain pound for pound level. If Klitschko starts ducking all these guys, can you really call him pound for pound? If there's other guys that have a claim to being a high level fighter, to being the best in the division, if you have Joshua out there destroying guys, if you have Deontay Wilder out there destroying guys, if you have Luis Ortiz outdoing you against your own past opponents and outdoing you in a bombastic way, Ortiz destroyed Bryant Jennings. Bryant Jennings gave Klitschko, probably the toughest fight since the first Samuel Peter fight, before Fury got to him anyway. And if you want to remain pound for pound level, especially at heavyweight, because heavyweights tend to get scrutinized even more so than the other weight classes, the way Tyson made it to number one was by devastating anyone and everyone who was at heavyweight in the late 80s. Tyson managed to get to pound for pound number one, I believe like 87 through 89. Just based off of, he was the undisputed champion. He was the fighter. He was the man. He engaged in that heavyweight tournament, destroyed everybody in it, then went on to destroy Michael Spinks, went on to fight the last great heavyweight champion, Larry Holmes, destroyed him, and it was no contest. There was nobody even giving him resistance. He just ran through the gamut, ran through the gauntlet, and he was the gauntlet. he ran them through the gauntlet. He ran these guys through the fucking cheese grater and made his name, and just annihilated anybody and everybody who had any sort of claim to being the top fighter in his weight division. So, pound for pound is largely a culmination of factors, a culmination of ability, what you show in the ring, as well as who you show that ability against, and it's also, weighed with regard to divisional dominance and interdivisional excellence. I'd say that Gonzalez definitely achieved divisional dominance and interdivisional excellence. I'd say divisional dominance primarily at 105 and 112, and interdivisional excellence across the weight classes. Kovalev right now is working on divisional dominance. Of course, Klitschko was working on divisional dominance until Fury got to him. And, that's pretty much it. I'm trying to remember if he mentioned anybody else in the video. Still have a little bit of time left here. No, I think he pretty much just kept it to Gonzalez, Kovalev, and Klitschko. But yeah, that's pretty much a summary of the factors that I keep in mind with regard to my response to this issue. To me, Roman Gonzalez is the number one pound for pound. I haven't really thought of. I don't really make lists frequently, so I haven't really thought of like who number 2, 3, 4, 5. I tend to usually I'll tend outside of number one. I'll tend to give a range. I'll say like, oh, he's probably about 3 to 5 or 7 to 9 or whatever. Kovalev, I'd have to think a little bit about it, but I think probably number 2 wouldn't be too far off. I really don't think it would be too far off. So that's pretty much it.